In the dead of night, flames devour a thriving native village in what is now Alabama. Hernando de Soto's expedition unleashes terror. Spanish soldiers, driven by greed for gold and glory, seize indigenous women as hostages and slaves. Bound and marched into the unknown, these women endure forced labor, carrying the invaders' burdens through swamps and forests. Worse still, they face the unspoken horrors of coercion and violation. These are patterns documented in the chronicles of the expedition itself. This is not fiction. It is the grim reality of 1539 to 1542, when De Soto's army scarred the southeast and shattered lives. Let the weight sink. Hernando, a seasoned conqueror from Spain's campaigns in Peru, landed in Florida in May 1539 with an army of over 600 men. Seeking riches like those plundered from the Inca, he ventured into uncharted territories. These lands were home to sophisticated indigenous nations, the Timucua, Apalachee, Cofitachequi, Coosa, and Chickasaw. Primary accounts from the Gentleman of Elvas, a Portuguese participant, and the reports of Luis Hernandez de Biedma and Rodrigo Ranjel describe an expedition marked by exploration but marred by brutality. De Soto's men relied on native guides and porters, often secured through force. As Biedma notes, the Spaniards thought nothing of torturing and killing those who refused to cooperate. This violence extended systematically to women, captured to ensure compliance from chiefs and to serve the army's needs. Indigenous women bore the brunt of De Soto's demands. Captured as hostages to guarantee safe passage, they were forced into grueling labor as porters, or tamims, hauling supplies across hundreds of miles. Low, heavy emphasis. In the Gentleman of Elvas's account, at towns like Tuwazi, chiefs provided carriers and 32 Indian women to appease the invaders. Ranjel's diary records similar tributes. The governor asked for carriers and 100 Indian women, and the chief gave him 400. These women were not volunteers. They were coerced offerings to avoid village destruction. Hostage-taking was strategic. In Cofitachequi, present-day South Carolina, the expedition encountered a powerful female ruler, the Lady of Cofitachequi. As described by Elvas, De Soto took her along with him, with certain of her principal Indians as slaves in chains, to serve as interpreters and guides. She and her attendants were marched away, their pearls and goods looted. Among the Chickasaw in Mississippi, De Soto demanded women outright, as Biedma recounts, intending to take Chickasaw women with them upon departure. This demand sparked fierce resistance. Exploitation went beyond labor. While primary sources rarely detail sexual violence explicitly due to the chronicler's biases, the patterns of enslavement and isolation imply widespread coercion. Wyatt measured loan. Women like Madalena, a Floridian captured during the expedition, entered Spanish records as servants in colonial households, their fates entangled in Atlantic slavery. Garcilaso de la Vega, drawing from survivor testimonies, hints at the dehumanization. Raids where soldiers captured some women whom they took to the camp. These acts disrupted families and communities, treating women as commodities in a campaign of conquest. Yet, amid the suffering, indigenous women resisted. Fifth to slightly firmer, more resolute tone. At Mobila in 1540, a massive ambush nearly destroyed De Soto's army. Elvas describes how Tuscaloosa's people, including women, fought back after hostages were taken. Thousands of natives died, but the Spaniards suffered heavy losses. Women played roles in these uprisings, as porters who overheard plans or as warriors defending homes. Survival strategies emerged. The Lady of Cofitachequi, kidnapped and chained, orchestrated her escape near present-day Camden, South Carolina, with help from an African deserter named Gamez. As recounted in expedition records, she vanished into the wilderness, reclaiming her freedom. For impact, other women, forced into service, adapted, learning Spanish phrases to negotiate or sabotaging supplies subtly. Ranjel notes instances where captured women overpowered isolated soldiers, like one who seized a Spaniard by his private parts in a desperate bid for escape. These acts of defiance preserved cultural knowledge, passed down through oral traditions despite the trauma. The expedition's legacy lingered like a shadow. De Soto's army introduced diseases, smallpox, measles, that decimated populations, killing up to 90% in some areas. Women, as caretakers and cultural bearers, suffered profound losses. Families torn apart, knowledge disrupted. Generational trauma echoed in disrupted matrilineal societies, where women's roles in leadership and kinship were undermined. Chroniclers like Elvas noted the desolation left behind, villages abandoned, fields untended. For survivors' descendants, this violence seeded centuries of displacement, culminating in the Trail of Tears. Yet resilience endures. Tribes like the Muskogee and Chickasaw preserve stories of these women, honoring their strength in the face of erasure. Hernando de Soto's quest failed to find gold, but it unearthed a darker truth: the human cost of conquest. Steady hone. As Americans reckon with colonial history, we must confront these accounts, from Elvas, Biedma, and Ranjel, not as distant tales, but as calls for accountability. Honoring the suffering of Indigenous women means acknowledging the foundations of our nation and amplifying voices long silenced. In their memory, we seek truth and healing.
Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And if you support real stories like this, hit subscribe to help us keep these stories coming.